collection. The textbook generally available in PDF, so we're not talking about the printed version that the students carry in potentially in their bag. We're talking about a PDF that comes with a lot of textbooks. Some of them are online now, and therefore you can copy and paste data directly. It's hit and miss sometimes. It depends on how that's been stored. If it's stored in a table, it's pretty easy to access, but it just saves students writing it down. That's not really what we should be about. We should be about analysing it. Websites. I'm going to use a website in this session to show you how easy it is to get data from the World Wide Web, but also how to look at what types of format you want to look at when you're trying to do that. Obviously, if you can download it as a spreadsheet or a CSV, or from our website, the TI one, you can download it as a TNS file, in which case you wouldn't even be bothering watching this session because it's all done for you. Google Forms is another one. If we get time, we'll go through quickly how you can create a Google form. People can send us some chat information if they're interested in looking into that. But it is a quick and easy way to get students to collect data rather than walking from class to class and doing surveys of students. You can just send them a link. You can send them a QR code, all sorts of tricks. Google and Google Correlate, so you can just do a Google search, but also Google Correlate is a great way to collect time series data. You can automatically export the data you collect from Google Correlate into a CSV, and I'm sure, and I'm happy for people also to put that in through the chat space if they've got other ways of collecting data from the World Wide Web. If you're using the Navigator software, the Quick Poll enables you to collect data, and you can send the poll out to the students. The information comes in, you sort it into a table, just a right-click on the data and say send to table, and then redistribute back to the students. So you can get information from the whole class and back out to students if you're using Navigator in a couple of seconds, which is very quick, rather than having to have students come out and write the results on the board and then copy it. And one of the big ones, and probably the least known, is the use of dynamic diagrams. And that's what Roger's going to be talking about tonight. He's going to set up a diagram to show you how easy it is. And then he's going to show you how to collect data from that diagram. So far you may have thought this is all about statistics, and that's why I sort of tweaked the title a little bit, you may have noticed, and said about data collection, not just statistics. So you can use data to do things like functions and algebra and calculus and geometry. So we'll also have a look into those. So the first we're going to have a look at is getting data from the World Wide Web, so some other external source, and putting it into the calculator. Now normally when we put it into the calculator, we'll put it into the spreadsheet application. So I did a Google search for AFL data. Being a Victorian, I'm interested in data for the football teams. So this is a website I found when doing my Google search, and it's an example of a very good website in terms of getting data from the web onto your calculator. There's another one here. This is the official AFL website. You'll see in the URL afl.com.au. Lots and lots of data on here, but very difficult to get. So if I try and copy and paste it, you can see straight away I'm getting pictures of the players. There's a lot of text coming in. There's this watch button. So it's an interactive space on the World Wide Web. This is a great place. But in terms of getting figures onto your calculator, it's not so great. Because if I copy and paste this, there's a lot of stuff that's going to try and go into my calculator. So it'd be better off going through a spreadsheet and deleting the bits that I don't want. So this is an example of a website that's not good if we're interested in doing the stats ourselves, in analysis ourselves. Another one I found out on the World Wide Web is this one over here. Oops, sorry, did that one. AFL tables. This is another good one. And this one has the opportunity to go back over quite a few years. So you can select the year that you want to have a look at. So I think that one's particularly good, from 1960 something through to 2019, and you can select what bits that you want, whether you want to analyse handballs, marks, goals, kicks, behinds, hit-outs, tackles, you name it. I'm going to try this one over here because it actually has the final siren one. It actually has the team's position on the ladder. Now, interesting is if we have a look over here where it says average rating, I can see straight away I'm going to fall into a problem. You'll notice there's a comma delimiter for the thousands. That's a bit annoying. Decimal places we're good with, and it's interesting because it's kind of inconsistent with the kicks over here where we're in the thousands, but there's no comma. But let's see what happens when we do it. Now, I don't actually want the headings, so you've got to try and be careful. You can delete them. I'm going to go down to the bottom and highlight upwards. Neat little trick. So I've highlighted all the data that I want, and I'll just right-click and copy. Go on to Inspire, and I'll start a new document with a spreadsheet in it. And you ready for this? Control-V, and it's pasted. That's it. It's really that simple, provided you've got the data in the right format on a website to begin with. Now, it seems to duplicate. This is on their website where it says team ranking and then ladder position. That information is duplicated, so that's the first thing I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to delete that column. And here's some values over here, and if I keep on scrolling, there's the one with the comma in it. Now, it looks fairly innocuous if you look at cell W1, but if you have a look at the bar down the bottom, you can see there's some quotation marks. It's actually treating that as text. So that's a bit of a pain. I could do the calculations, find out how they're doing their team ranking, or there is another way. I could actually just press the Shift key and highlight the data for the 18 teams. I'm going to copy that. I'll go into Excel. You can see I was fiddling around with it earlier, but I'll do it again. And I'll paste it. And you can see Excel's quite happy to have the commas there. I'm going to highlight it, and you can format your numbers in Excel, and one of the options is use the comma as a separator. Well, I don't want that, so I'm going to uncheck that box, click on OK, then I'll just go back to copy, come back into here, make sure I'm at the top, and the trick is here, just on the one cell, don't try and highlight them all. It's easy if you let the software take care of it. Do you want to override it? Sure. And now I've got rid of the comma delimiter, and I'm ready to start graphing some of the information. So, in order to graph it, I need to give the column some headings. So this is the ladder position. I'll just write it as ladder. This was the number of players that they've used so far this season. I'm not particularly interested in that. This is the number of kicks. Interestingly, this one is the average number of kicks. I don't really want that one. I think I could probably work that out, so I'm going to delete that one. The next one from memory was handballs. So I've given that a name. And further over, this one's disposal. This is average handball, so I can just arrow up and delete that one as well. I don't want to put too much information in because the file becomes too big. So I'm just being a bit prudent as to how I'm going to do it. This one is disposals, and to save time I'm going to write DISP. Oops. It doesn't like it because I've already had one that way, I guess. Oh no, because DISP is short for display. A reserve word. And I could continue labelling them, but let's just have a look at what we've got so far. So we've got the team name, that's text. Probably not going to use it, but I'll leave it there for now. It's ladder position kicks, and I'm interested, does the number of kicks that a team gets, does that influence their ladder position? So I'll insert, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, Control-I, and I'll insert a data and statistics application. And down here I'll get their ladder position. And let's have a look at disposals. Interesting, there's not a huge relationship. We can see a general trend coming down here. So we could do a bit of an analysis. We could do a movable line, or I'm just going to drop in a regression line. And a few people have asked, how do you get the coefficient, the Pearson's correlation coefficient? There it is here. Under the settings for this application, you just select Diagnostics, click on OK, and we can see not exactly fabulous, is it? So let's try kicks. There's actually a stronger correlation between the number of kicks that a team has than disposals. Handballs, guessing that one's not going to be all that flash. Look at that. There's almost no correlation. I'm going to put it out there. There is no correlation between the number of handballs that a team does and their position on the ladder. It's a much stronger correlation between the number of kicks. Interestingly enough, the activity that's on the TI website under the Victorian one for further maths suggests that students make up their own formula and see what the correlation is. For example, 50% of the values for kicks plus 20% of the values for tackles, and make up their own thing to find the strongest correlation. What should we be focusing on? Anyway, that's how we get data from the World Wide Web onto the calculator. So let's go on from there. Now we want to get that data from the teacher's calculator. That's the one with the funny little hat on it. We want to get that out onto student calculators. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. The easiest way is to use a system called Navigator. That's where they have those little yellow hats on them, and the teacher has the access point, and you just hit send to class, and then every single student that's logged in will have a copy of the data. And the best bit is then if they're using that file, you can then retrieve it back from them at the end of the lesson. Another way to do it is using a docking station. A lot of people don't realize that the docking station has a USB port in one end, just the same as the calculator, and you can connect that to your computer. And on the teacher software, you go Tools, Transfer Tool. You pick up the files that you want to send, so add to transfer, and then hit Start Transfer. Then every single calculator that's placed in that docking station will receive the file that you've sent. And even better, they continue to receive it, so you don't have to keep on pressing that button. Every time a student puts a calculator in, the little lights on the docking station flash, and then they can take it out, the next student drops it in, and so on. The downside about that system is you can't retrieve them easily like you can with Navigator. And of course the third way is simply send to handheld and then get the students to transfer it from one handheld to another using the file and send from the My Documents folder. And the next thing before I transfer over to Roger, the Oops option. So we're talking about managing data. So you saw before I put a lot of data on the calculator, and it's original data from a website. We don't want it messed up, and occasionally the students will inadvertently mess up the data by dragging it, as I'll demonstrate in a minute. So it's like, oops, I changed it. Do I have to start again? Is there a way? Well, there is a Control-Z option, which means you can undo, but there's also a nice little padlock. In other words, you can lock the data so that it can't be moved. Let's swap over. So what I'm talking about here is a student accidentally drags that and goes, oh, I didn't mean to do that. So I'm going to press Control-Z, and that will take that data point back to where it was. But they could have multiple points selected and accidentally move them all. And we don't want that to happen because we're messing up the original data. So how do we stop that? Here's our trick. I'll insert a calculator application, and under the menus, actions, there's this cool tool called lock a variable. So I'm going to lock a variable, and I can click on this list, and anything that's listed as a variable, they're the ones with the little parentheses around them, little curly brackets. And let's lock the ladder position. That would be kind of nice because my team is doing quite well at the moment. And I can continue adding variables here. Another one, it's not a great shortcut, but it's another shortcut. Control-L is another way to get your, it's good on the computer. Let's lock the handballs, and we'll lock the disposals. They're the two that I've got up at the moment. Oh, we might as well lock the kicks as well while we're at it. Control-L, and let's lock kicks and press Enter. Now watch what happens when I try and change it. I can't move it. The data is now locked so that there's nothing I can do to mess it up. You're probably wondering how you unlock it. Well, that's pretty easy. Menu, lock, unlock. And then just put the variables in that you want to make flexible again. So we've covered some sources on where you can get the data from and how to put it onto the calculator, how to send it to students' calculator, a little bit on managing, and then we'll come back after we've worked with Roger, who's going to demonstrate how we can use a geometry tool, of all things, to collect data. So let me just transfer presentation over to Roger. And while we're waiting for Roger's screen to come up, by all means, if you have anything that you want to go through on any one of the options that I presented before, whether it be the Google form or other data collection tools, let me know and we'll throw that in. So it's over to you, Roger.
Peter, and I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. We're looking today at a problem that I wrote a few years ago, and it uses what's called dynamic geometry, which means that you've got a geometric diagram where some parts of it move. And although this particular one doesn't, because I've actually put an image onto a notes page, and that's locked in, we're going to build a diagram like this up by scratch, and we're going to see by moving point D, we're going to see what the changes are within the triangle that we have in this circle. Now this problem is a good one, I think, for year 10s, because not only do they learn all their circle geometry, or they will have learned it by then, they'll start to get the idea of one variable depending on another. So we're going to take a look now and start right at the very beginning. And keep in mind that tonight's webinar is being recorded. So while I will not, my job is not to go so fast that you're left behind in the dust. However, we've got a limited amount of time tonight. So if there's some things that you're finding that you want to go back over again, you just get onto the TI website in the section that involves professional development for teachers. You'll find tonight's webinar. A recording of that will be up by tomorrow or maybe even later tonight, and you can play and stop it as you wish to pick up some of the details. Excuse me. Now this particular file is being created in a geometry page. In the geometry menu, page doesn't start off looking too much different to anything else, but in the geometry menu, we have settings, and I just want to point out a couple of things that it's important. Pardon me, Peter, could you take over for a minute, please? I'll just run and get a glass of water. I'll be right back.
Sure. So what Roger's looking at here is the graphs and geometry settings. Very similar sort of idea to what we had. Someone asked about the R² value. Every application essentially has its own settings. So you've got settings for the actual document, but you've also got settings in each application. So in this one, you'll see that we can change the number of decimal places, or number of figures rather, that's shown on the screen for calculations, but also the graphing angle is in radian, and interestingly that the geometry angle by default is set to degrees. So even if you've got your document set to radians, if you start measuring angles, the default is degree, which I think is reasonable because most people, if they're looking at an angle, they'll estimate it in degrees rather than radians. So you can set these things from within any application. So the R² value that we had before was available through the settings menu in the data and statistics application.
That's right, and I'm back. I hope that I don't have to leave again. Thanks very much, Peter.
That's all right.
Okay, so yes, I just wanted to make sure, because we're going to be measuring the key angle is going to be measured in degrees. I also have this at float 3, which means that the values are not going to get outrageously long, and they'll be able to be stored quite easily in the data and statistics. So I'll click OK on that setting, and we're back to this page. Peter might narrate for a while what I'm doing. That might be the trick out of this. So I'm going to start with creating a circle.
And just while Roger's creating that circle, a really neat trick, if you want a circle with a particular radius, you can also put text on the screen, type in the radius that you want, and then you click and point on the center, and you click on the measurement that you've cast or set, and it will create a circle of that radius, which is a neat little trick.
On the geometry page also, whenever you ask it to do something, you get this little icon in the upper left corner. If you hover the mouse over here, you get a reminder of what you can do. Thank you. So I'm just simply going to put the center point, drag the mouse out, form the circle. When it's as big as I want it to be, then I'll just give it a good double click, and that will finish that. I don't want any more circles nominated, so I press Escape, and that turns off that circle icon. This is really important, to be able to go into a menu, do what you want to do, and then to come back out. The next thing we're going to be doing is to draw a diameter. Now, there are many ways to do it, but we know the diameter has to go through the center. So I'm going to now go to Menu, Points and Lines, select Line, and I'm going to, and what's the direction for the line? Click two locations. So one of those will be the center point. Click. And then I'm going to just come out here so I'm outside the circle. Click again, double click, and that finishes it off. It will continue to draw lines if I don't do anything about that. So I press Escape, and that gets rid of that spider web. Press Escape again, and now I'm not in that line mode anymore. I want to extend this line, and again on the computer it's a lot easier than on the handheld, but if you put your cursor near the line here, and on my, I've got a Windows laptop, if I just hold that down and just drag that off to the left, it grabs the end of the line and extends it as long as I want it to. I release that, and on the handheld, that would be simply a matter of hovering the hand near the end of the line and clicking on the this middle key here, which closes the hand and grabs it. When you press Escape, the hand releases again. Okay, well, I'd like to get the 2 points that line intersects the circle with, so I go to Menu, Points and Lines, Intersection Points, and now the directions are, you just click on the first object and second object is going to be the circle and the line. It doesn't matter which order, so I click on the circle, click on the line. My 2 points are there. I pull the cursor away just to see, yeah, that's what I wanted. I'm going to press Escape, which will turn the icon off. Okay, well, that's the first part of it. And if you notice that what we're creating, we're going to be creating something like this. Okay, with the colors and everything. We'll go back to this bit. Now, just for the sake of brevity, I'm not going to chop off the line here. I'm going to just leave the end of the line there. That'll be fine. But I need another point, and that's going to be a point on the circle. So Menu, Points and Lines, Point on. Choose the circle. That'll be the, whoops, escape. I'm not in the point on again, so I need to do Menu, Points and Lines, Point on, hit the circle, tap it there, get it to lock on. I press Escape to turn that icon off. I've got my 3 points, actually my 4 points. I'm going to now label them. Point A is the center point, so I come up here. To put the label on that point, I right-click, and with the handheld, it's a Control menu, and we go to item number 2, which is label. I'm going to put in capital letter A and press Enter. It's going to be useful to move that label up there. The point over here is point B. So once again, I right-click, label, point B, and press Enter. Grab the point, maybe place it out here. Then I will be labeling this point, which is point C. Label, capital C, Enter. And that can stay pretty much where it is. Now, the point that is the most important in all this is the point that's on the circle down here. This is point D. That's the one that we're going to be moving. We're going to keep B, A, and C will stay exactly as they are. We could lock them in by pinning them if we want to, but I'm not going to bother to do that. I'm going to label that as point D in the same way as I've done before. Label point D, Enter. But now notice that if I come back here and I grab that point, that will go any place. Its label will follow along, and it's any place on the circle. That's really important. I'm going to throw it back up here. Now looking back at what we're trying to create, we've got 3 triangles involved. The blue, the orange, and then the right-angled triangle, which students will remember as always happening when one of the sides is the diameter of the circle and the point is on the circumference. So we'll start off with the right-angled triangle BDC. I'll call it BDC. So I go to Menu, and this time it's Shapes. I go for Triangle, and Triangle remembers that if it's a triangle, it's only going to have 3 vertices, and we always want to make sure that we're choosing the vertices that we have there already. So just notice how the icon, the pencil icon, which has a floating point, I could choose that if I wanted to, but I don't. I go up here, and when it gets to B, it says, this will lock in point B. Well, that's what I want. So I want B as my first point. I drag it towards point D, and you see the spider web that comes along with it, point D, and then over to point C. As soon as I hit that, it's not looking for any more points. It highlights the fact that we've got B, D, C, and you got a nice little visualization of the right-angled triangle. If we were to grab point D, it would stay right-angled. I'll show that a little bit later. Now, I have 2 more triangles to create, so I do not want to escape from this icon. Instead, let me just talk about the next triangle I want to create is BAD. I'll do that order, so I start with B, then A, then D, and that's now highlighted. Finally, I want to create triangle ADC. So, start with A, D, C. I've got my 3 triangles. Those are the only triangles I want, so I'm going to pull away from this and press Escape, which means I'm out of the triangle creation menu. It's very helpful here in a pedagogical sense to be able to refer to the triangles, sometimes by color. I find this to be really good. With the class, you can talk about the blue one and the orange one, and I'll show you how to do that. We go over to that area, and you notice that as we get close, we've got triangle ACD. Now, that's not the triangle that I want to make blue. I want ABD to be blue. So I'll find one of the sides that's got ABD. That's good. You notice the tab that's nearby? That means that is also a side of another triangle. I'm going to just press Tab and show you that it's also a way of selecting the big right angled triangle. In fact, the first one that we did. But that one I'm not going to color in. So I'm going to press Tab again and go back. Students and teachers need to be aware of what's on the screen. There's a lot of information that's hidden, and you can get to it easily, but you've got to pay attention to what's going on the screen. So, and I don't want the line there either, so I need to tab once again back to triangle ABD. Now that means that anything that I'm doing will be affected by it. It's affecting triangle ABD only. I now right-click because what I want to do is change the color. So I go down to option B, and you notice the color. I don't want the outline so much as the fill. So I go over here to the fill color. I'll just leave that trail up there for a minute. And that's also a good pedagogical thing to do. Let your students follow what you're doing. If they're trying to create the same thing, you might be creating the one file that you're about to send to them. It depends on what you want to be doing. But if you want them to be following along and building as you're building, sometimes you've got to realize you're going to be ahead of a few of the kids who have been nudged or just came back from the toilet or wherever, or went out to get a drink like I'm going to do now. Okay, so with the fill color you get a variety, and I'm going to choose blue. And when I press enter, or when I just take this away and press enter, you get that nice rich blue text again. I want to do triangle ADC as being orange, so I'll go over here. You see that ACD, that was the order that I chose them in, I guess, or it automatically alphabetized the points. That's the triangle that I want. Right-click again, which remember on the handheld is a control menu. And once again, we go to color. I'll go to fill color, and I'll turn that into orange. Pull that away, and I've got 2 very distinct triangles, which I can either name by vertex, or I can name by color, and that's quite useful. Okay, now for the measuring. Well, maybe before we measure, I can just show you that when I grab point D, you can see the right-angled triangle is preserved, which is a nice verification of that rule of circle geometry. And we can also see that the blue and the orange triangles are changing shape. And we know that in terms of measurements, they are also changing their areas and perimeters. And the question involved with this one is, how are they changing and what is it depending on? So we're going to take a look at setting up some measurements. The first measurement we're going to make is of this angle in the blue triangle at A, in other words, angle ABD. So I go to Menu, Measurement, Angle. And the instructions for the angle are to click the 3 points. What it doesn't say is to make sure that the middle point that you choose is the vertex of the angle. So it's a good chance to familiarize or refamiliarize your students with the terminology. So I'll choose B, then A, then D. B, A, D. And as soon as I hit that point D, the 40.2 is up there as the degrees there. Now that's the only angle that I want to measure, so I'm going to press Escape. And I'm going to take that measure and I'm going to stick it over here. If I go back and grab point D, you can see that it is automatically tied in. It's dynamic. It is changing as the visual is changing, the measurement is changing, which is exactly what we want to do. Now, to help us out with our further work, we need to assign a variable to this value, 41.7. It was the measure of angle ABD. So I go over to the text. I've got the open hand. Once more, I right-click or Control menu if you're on the handheld, and I go to item number 5, which is Store. And I can choose the variable that I want to call that. I want to call it BAD, but I don't want to just say BAD because what do we mean? What aspect of BAD? I want angle BAD. So on this page, the capital letters will be preserved. So I'm going to do capital A-N-G-L-E and then capital B-A-D. When I press Enter, you notice that it's now in black, and it means that we now have our first variable. I've pulled it back onto the screen for us, and angle BAD is there. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is to grab the areas of the area of the blue triangle and the area of the right-angled triangle. So I go first of all to make sure that I'm going to go to Menu and Measurement and Area. And when I go over here, we've got a variety of things that could have a particular area. I want the blue triangle, which is BAD. I don't have it there yet, so I'm going to press Tab. There it is, ABD, same thing. And you notice that it's grayed, it's ghosted there as 17.5 or 47.5. I can't see what's behind the hand there. But anyway, it's there. I'll just tap it again, and that'll lock that value in. Maybe tap it twice. There we go, 17.5. And I'm going to escape from that temporarily, bring that over here. It was 17.5 centimeters squared. What was it? It was the area of triangle BAD. Once again, I want to store it. So right-click, Store. The variable name this time is going to be area BAD. Press Enter. It's locked in. Drag it back in. And you can see that as I move point D, both the angle size and the area are changed. Okay, finally, I want to take a look at the area of the larger triangle. Oh, look, I'll save that for the present time. I'm going to take a look at the perimeter of the right-angled triangle. So perimeter isn't found under measurement in the usual spot, but it's a version of length. And Nspire will interpret length as being, if you have correctly chosen the object. So BCD, yes, that's what we want. So I'm going to give that a double, whoops, okay. I'll go back to Menu, Measurement, Length. And I want that triangle. Well, for some reason, I'm being a little bit, let's see, Menu, Measurement, Length. Once again, okay, that's the one that I want. And 27.7 centimeters is that measurement. That's the perimeter of triangle BDC. So I've got that listed. Once again, I'm going to create that variable for that, and that'll be PERIM of, what was it, BDC, and press Enter. So I've got a few variables there. Okay. Well, what am I going to do with that? The idea is now we're going to see, I'm going to bring point D up here a little bit to start off with, okay? We're going to we want to gather some data from this diagram just to see what we've actually got. To do that, we're going to open up a Lists and Spreadsheet page. So I go under Document, Insert. There's several ways to do this. I'm going to choose Lists and Spreadsheet. Now, in column A, for the top here, I want to have this first variable is going to be the measure of angle BAD. All right? Now, I can't just put in the variable that I've got because this is going to be a different variable. This will be a list variable. The previous one was a numerical variable, and they are different. Okay, so for up here, I'm going to type in angle, but I'm going to put an underscore BAD because when I press enter, the capitalization will be lost, but the underscore has helped us to read it more easily. Without the underscore, it will be Anglabad, and you think that you're in someplace in the Middle East, and instead we have Anglebad. Okay. Now, that will be linked in a little bit. We're going to come back here and do the same thing for B. We're going to list some values, and we'll have the calculator pick up values for the area. Once again, underscore of triangle BAD. I've put in the underscore, and we press enter for that. And finally, up here, we're going to have perimeter. I'll just put perim underscore, and I think that was BDC. Enter. Okay. Now, this is where the calculator comes into its own as far as gathering data. We set up in this formula bar, we're going to set up a manual data capture. Now, many of you teachers may have seen this. Maybe many of you have done it, but there would be some for whom this is brand new. So I'll slow this right down. Okay. Under the menu for data and statistics, we have data, and we have data capture. There are two types, and I'm choosing for pedagogical purposes to do the manual data capture. You'll see why a little bit later, so patience, please. So we did menu, data, data capture, manual. What data do we want to capture? We want to capture data from a variable we've already created. If I look on my variable menu, going over here and press var, remember from the previous page in geometry, angle BAD was the one without the underscore. Now, it's not showing up as being capitalized here. It was on the geometry page. But it's the one without the underscore. I'm going to hit that and press enter. I'm going to do a similar thing in this one, menu, data, data capture, manual. This time it was for the area of BAD, so I go to the var, area BAD without the underscore, enter. And then finally for the perimeter, menu, data, data capture, manual, which variable, one without the underscore for perimeter, enter. So far, nothing's happened. Put the cursor over here in cell A1. And we go back now to page 1.1. Currently, all of those have values. Angle BAD is 28.7 degrees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I press Control full stop, so Control decimal point, and now look at page 1.2, the first row has been populated with those values. And in fact, you can see the accuracy down here. You can see that this has gone out to about 13 decimal places, something like that, or 12. So, quite a few. Okay. Now, dynamic geometry says, well, let's move things a bit. let's move the point D so that we have a slightly bigger angle. And let's put it up to, say, about here, round to maybe being about 50 degrees. And now once more, with that as a setting, let's turn off that dot there. With that as a setting, I'm going to press Control, full stop. I look at the data and statistics page, and the second row has been populated. Now, there's no need to move things there. And finally, let's go then back to the page, and let's bring that maybe point D, let's bring it around the halfway mark here to maybe about here someplace. And Control decimal point. This only works on the manual data capture, by the way. We've got a third value. Now at this stage, you as a teacher can say, okay, let's see what's happening. The students can look at the numbers, and they can see some numbers going up, some numbers going down. Trying to make some sense out of this. What's happening here? Well, we can make our best sense out of it if we take a look at a graph. So we go to the doc, insert, let's take a look at a data and statistics page. Our independent variable, what we used to call the independent variable in the old days, but the descriptive variable here is going to be angle BAD. So we'll have that value there, and we can see that we've got those three values. If we go back to on the left side and just take a look at, well, let's see what's happened to the area of triangle BAD at the same time. Well, students are going to look at that and say, oh, it looks like as your angle goes up, you get some conversation going. As the angle goes up, it looks like the angle, like the area is going up. And it looks, you've got your preliminary analysis of the data might be that, oh, yeah, it keeps going up. Let's go back to page 1.1, however. Drag the point around to say over here, to say up in the 140s someplace. Do another Control full stop. Check out, we've got 4 values. Oh, something's plummeted there in the perimeter, and also in the area. And we go back to page 1.3, and you can say, oh, can't see any change. However, in the menu, you notice that the previous settings for the graph are as they were when we had just 3 points. If you go to the window and have it zoom in using all the data that's currently available, the adjustments would be made. The fact that we have now this falling is going to start to suggest to them, well, maybe there's something more interesting going on here. So if we go back to 1.1 and do a whole host of data captures, Control full stop, and bring point D up here, Control full stop, point up here, Control stop. And you can do as many as you want to, Control. See if the table is now filled quite a bit. It hasn't filled as much as I wanted it to. I'm not sure why that was. Oh, maybe I didn't do this Control full stop. Bring D around. Control full stop once again. Bring that around. Control full stop. Looking at the page, we've got lots more data, but more importantly, looking at the graph, we've got a hint of a very familiar graph for year 10 on upwards, and the fact is that it actually is quadratic. If you had chosen to do the data collection from here to be the automatic capture, where you just drag the point D through the diagram, and it would pick up all those points straight away, then you would have so many points that would form quite a perfect inverted parabola. And we're very close to the end of the session here, and I've taken up a fair bit of your time, but I tried to give you an idea about how geometry diagrams, and thinking about, that old problem about the largest rectangle that fits under a parabola. This would be perfect if you find the one point that you can move, making your diagram dynamic, and then control the information. It's something that I would like to show you that in a diagram that is actually on your, will be on the TI presentation, goes through all of this kind of in detail, and it includes, right at the end, it includes a list of the kinds of investigations that you might then ask the students to do. Now, I've used the old terminology, independent variable, dependent variable, but I think most of us teachers know what we're talking about here. This is your horizontal axis. This is your vertical axis. There's so many different things that you can measure and all getting these different results. And you can send the students off into a whole lot of different, really worthwhile investigations where they're using their technology to gather data from a diagram they have created rather than something that has been churned out by the teachers. So I'm now going to hand over, and thank you very much for listening. And it's back to Peter or Daisy.
Yeah, I think we'll go straight back to Daisy because we're right on the money with regards to time. It gives us an opportunity to demonstrate more of these things at another webinar further down the track. For those people that have been following along and are interested in the things like Google Correlate, there's another one, Google Trends, where you can access data and it gives you or allows you to export it as a CSV file, which is pretty cool. So over to you, Daisy.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Peter and Roger, for a wonderful session. Yes, we have gone slightly over time, I suppose, but good quality activities and information. So hopefully you can use it in your classes. So thanks for joining us. And as mentioned previously, the PD certificate link for this particular webinar will come out in the next couple of days with a thank you email. So thank you, Peter, thank you, Roger, and thanks to the listeners. Until next time, goodbye.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.